Picture this. You are sitting at a red light in a practical, paid-off sedan. Around you are shiny new SUVs, massive pickup trucks with chrome details, and vehicles that look like they belong in a luxury commercial. In that moment, a quiet thought creeps in. Am I falling behind? It feels like everyone else figured something out that you did not. Here is the truth that rarely gets discussed. What you are seeing on the road is not a parade of wealth. It is a parade of financing. Modern auto loans have turned highways into moving showrooms. Because trucks and SUVs now dominate new vehicle sales, the most visible cars are also the most expensive ones. Your brain uses what it sees most often to define normal. So when many vehicles around you look expensive, your mind starts to believe that expensive is standard. But appearances can be misleading. Many of the people driving those vehicles are not millionaires or secretly wealthy. They are teachers, nurses, office workers, small business employees, and parents with regular incomes. Their lives include bills, stress, and financial trade-offs just like yours. The main difference is not higher income. It is a higher tolerance for monthly debt. This creates a powerful perception trap. Instead of comparing savings, investments, or net worth, people compare vehicles. You start measuring your financial progress against someone else's car, even though that car may represent years of loan payments. A large vehicle payment can be structured to look manageable each month, especially when stretched over many years. But the total cost over time can be far heavier than it first appears. When we see the same pattern again and again, we assume it is safe and smart. That is how social norms form. The auto market relies on this effect. If enough people carry large payments, it starts to feel ordinary. The key insight is simple but powerful. Visibility does not equal affordability. Just because something is common does not mean it is financially healthy. Recognizing this helps you make choices based on your long-term goals, not on pressure created by what you see through your windshield. Once you understand that the road is full of financed lifestyles rather than pure wealth, the next question becomes even more important. How did payments this large start to feel normal in the first place? Because the illusion is not just visual, it is built into the numbers people quietly accept every month. Not long ago, a car payment near $1,000 would have sounded extreme. Today, payments in this range of $700 for an average new vehicle are common, and trucks and large SUVs often push far beyond that. Somehow, what once felt outrageous is now described as typical. That shift did not happen because incomes suddenly doubled. For most households, wages have risen slowly, while vehicle prices and loan sizes have climbed much faster. This is where normalization becomes powerful and dangerous. When enough people around you carry large payments, the emotional resistance fades. The phrase everyone says is prices went up. That is true, but it is only part of the story. Traditional budgeting guidelines suggested that transportation costs should be a modest portion of income. Under that logic, very high payments would only fit comfortably for high earners. Yet many middle-income households sign contracts for vehicles that consume a large share of their monthly cash flow. The gap between income and payment is filled in ways that are easy to overlook. Longer loan terms lower the monthly figure. Trade-ins with remaining balances get folded into new loans. Other spending quietly shrinks to make room. People do not feel an immediate financial crash. Instead, they feel constant pressure. Saving becomes harder. Emergencies feel scarier. Big goals like buying a home, starting a business, or investing for the future move further away. The car payment turns into a fixed bill that sits next to housing, food, utilities, and insurance. It demands attention every month, no matter what else is happening in life. The real concern is not that a few people stretch this far. It is that millions do, often without fully realizing how much flexibility they have traded away. What feels normal on the surface can quietly reshape an entire financial life underneath. So if large payments now feel normal, the next piece of the puzzle is how those payments are made to look reasonable in the first place. The biggest tool behind this shift is something most buyers barely think about while sitting in the dealership office. It is the length of the loan. Years ago, car loans commonly ran 3 or 4 years. Today, 6 and 7-year loans are standard, and 8-year terms are no longer rare. This change alone can transform how a deal feels. A vehicle with a high price can look completely out of reach with a short loan, but suddenly seem manageable when the timeline stretches far into the future. The monthly number drops, and that is the number most people focus on. This is the core trick. Instead of asking how much the vehicle truly costs, buyers are guided to ask whether the monthly payment fits their current budget. Spreading the loan over many years can turn a very large purchase into a payment that feels only slightly uncomfortable. That small emotional shift is often enough to move someone from hesitation to signature. But the math behind the scenes tells a different story. A longer loan means more interest paid over time and more years committed to the same debt. You are not just paying for the vehicle, you're paying for the privilege of stretching the obligation. That means the total amount spent on the car rises, sometimes by many thousands of dollars, simply because the term is longer. At the same time, the vehicle itself is losing value quickly, especially in the first few years. Cars are assets that wear out and depreciate. So, while your loan moves forward slowly, the car's market value drops much faster. This creates a situation where you may owe more than the vehicle is worth for a large portion of the loan. That limits your flexibility. Selling or trading becomes complicated, and you are more likely to stay in the loan longer than planned. Long terms do not make vehicles cheaper. They just make the cost feel smaller today, while pushing more risk and more expense into your future. When long loan terms stretch the payment into something that feels manageable, they quietly set the stage for the next problem. And this is where the real trap begins. It is called negative equity, and most buyers never calculate it in advance. The moment a new vehicle leaves the dealership, its value drops. This is normal for cars, but the speed of that drop surprises many people. During the first few years, depreciation can be steep, while your loan balance does not fall nearly as fast. Early payments often cover interest and only slowly reduce the principal. That creates a gap between what the car's worth and what you still owe. This is what people mean when they say they are upside down on a loan. You might owe $30,000 while the vehicle could sell for much less. On paper, that difference might look like a technical detail. In real life, it removes flexibility. If your income changes, your family needs shift, or you simply want a less expensive vehicle, you cannot easily sell or trade without covering that gap in cash. And most households do not have several $1,000s set aside just to exit a car loan. This situation has become more common as loan terms grow longer. 5 years into a long loan, many owners still carry a large balance on a vehicle that is aging, facing higher maintenance risk, and worth far less than the debt attached to it. At that point, the car is no longer new, but the loan still feels very new. This is also where another cycle often begins. When someone wants a different vehicle, the remaining negative equity can be added into the next loan. The old shortfall does not disappear. It gets carried forward. Once a buyer has been upside down once, the next deal often starts from an even deeper position. Each step feels like an upgrade, but financially, it can resemble sinking further into soft ground. Without careful planning, what looks like moving forward can quietly make it harder and harder to stand on solid financial footing. And just when negative equity has limited your flexibility, another offer often appears that sounds like a perfect solution. Big signs, bold numbers, and one phrase that feels almost magical: 0% financing. On the surface, it sounds like the system is finally working in your favor. But 0% does not mean free. In most cases, the cost of that special financing is built into the overall deal. Instead of paying interest over time, you may be paying a higher purchase price up front. Buyers are often choosing between two paths. One option is a promotional rate with little room to negotiate the price. The other is a discounted vehicle paired with a standard interest rate. Getting both the biggest discount and zero interest at the same time is uncommon. The reason this works so well is psychological. 0% feels like a win. It feels smart and responsible. It gives the impression that you beat the system. But if the vehicle price is higher than it would be under a different structure, the total amount you pay over the life of the loan can be very similar. Sometimes it can even be more. These promotions also tend to come with conditions. Strong credit, stable income, and certain loan terms may be required. Shorter terms can push monthly payments higher, which can strain budgets. Meanwhile, buyers who do not meet those conditions may be offered longer loans at regular rates, which brings back the risks we already discussed. More years, more interest, and more time exposed to depreciation. There is an irony here. The people who qualify for the best financing terms are often the ones who have the most financial stability and the ability to choose less expensive options if they want. For others, the headline rate can distract from the full picture. The key lesson is to step back and look at the total cost, not just the interest rate printed on a sign. A deal that sounds free on the surface can still lead to a very expensive outcome once all the numbers are added together over time. Once promotional financing and long loan terms have done their job, the next stage often unfolds almost automatically. This is where many buyers step on to what can be called the trade-in treadmill, a cycle that feels like progress, but often leads to deeper debt. It usually starts a few years after the first purchase. The vehicle no longer feels new. A different model catches your eye. Maybe your needs change, or maybe the constant flow of advertising makes your current car feel outdated. The desire to switch is normal. The problem is that the loan is still very much alive, and the vehicle may be worth less than the remaining balance. At this point, the dealership can offer what sounds like a simple solution. Instead of writing a check to cover the difference between what you owe and what the car is worth, that gap is added into the new loan. The old shortfall does not go away. It just moves forward with you. So a new vehicle that costs $50,000 might turn into a loan for much more once the previous balance is included. Because the monthly payment is adjusted with another long term, the change may not feel dramatic. The focus stays on whether the payment fits, not on how large the total debt has become. From the driver's seat, life seems to be moving forward. You get a newer car, new features, and a fresh contract. But financially, you may not be gaining ground. Repeat this cycle a few times and years can pass while you are still making payments connected to vehicles you no longer own. Each step adds another layer of obligation. The feeling of upgrading can hide the reality that the financial hole is getting deeper. Breaking this cycle usually requires time, patience, and paying down enough of the loan to rebuild equity. That path is less exciting than a new car, but it is often the only way to step off the treadmill and regain control over how your money is working for your future. After seeing how the trade-in treadmill keeps people moving, but not truly progressing, it becomes clear that this pattern is not driven by numbers alone. There is a deeper force at work, and it lives in psychology, not spreadsheets. Over time, vehicles have shifted from simple tools into identity products. Car marketing rarely focuses only on transportation. Instead, it connects vehicles with ideas like success, strength, freedom, and status. A commercial showing a powerful truck on a mountain road is not just about towing capacity. It is about the feeling of being capable, independent, and in control. Even people whose daily routine involves offices, schools, and grocery stores are invited to see themselves in that story. When a purchase is tied to identity, the emotional meaning changes. The payment no longer feels like a bill. It can feel like proof of progress or a reward for hard work. Thoughts like, "I deserve this," become part of the justification. There is nothing wrong with enjoying nice things, but it becomes risky when a depreciating object is treated as a symbol of personal worth. This emotional layer explains why large car payments are often defended so strongly. If someone questions the cost, it can feel like a personal criticism, not a financial discussion. That makes it harder to consider alternatives, like keeping a vehicle longer, choosing something used, or selecting a simpler model. The decision is no longer just about transportation needs. It is about how someone sees themselves and how they believe others see them. This also feeds directly into the trade-in cycle. If a vehicle is part of your identity, it feels important to refresh that identity with something new every few years. Financially, that can mean more debt and less flexibility. Psychologically, it can feel like staying current. Real financial freedom often starts with a quiet mental shift. Your value as a person is not defined by what you drive. When transportation returns to being a tool rather than a statement, decisions become calmer, more rational, and more aligned with long-term goals. Once you separate identity from the vehicle, another layer of clarity appears. You start to see that the monthly payment, the number everyone talks about, is only the surface. The real financial impact comes from the full ownership stack, all the ongoing costs that follow you long after you leave the dealership. A vehicle is not a one-line expense. It is a chain of connected bills. Insurance is one of the first surprises. Higher-priced vehicles usually cost more to insure because repairs and replacements are more expensive. That can mean hundreds of dollars each month before you even turn the key. Then there is fuel. Larger vehicles with lower fuel efficiency can quietly consume a significant part of your budget, especially with a daily commute or frequent driving. Maintenance and repairs are another major piece. Modern vehicles are complex machines filled with electronics, sensors, and specialized parts. Routine services cost more than many people expect, and larger repairs can be significant. Tires, brakes, suspension components, and unexpected mechanical issues all add up over time. These expenses do not arrive on a neat monthly schedule, which makes them easier to ignore when planning. But they are still real. The challenge is that many buyers focus intensely on securing the vehicle and fitting the payment into their budget. The other costs are treated as background noise until something breaks or a renewal notice arrives. When those bills hit and there is no buffer, people often rely on credit cards or additional borrowing, layering more debt onto an already tight situation. Over several years, these combined costs can reach a very large total. You may spend an amount that could have supported other major goals, yet end up with a vehicle worth far less than what you put in. The important lesson is simple. Affordability is not defined by whether the payment fits this month. It is defined by whether the full stack of ownership costs fits comfortably into your life without pushing everything else to the edge. When you look at the full ownership stack, a deeper question naturally follows. It is not only about what the vehicle costs you, it is about what that cost quietly takes away from your future. This is the idea of opportunity cost, and it is one of the most powerful parts of the entire conversation. A large monthly vehicle payment does more than reduce your bank balance. It reduces your choices. $800 to $1,200 each month could be building an emergency fund, reducing other debt, saving for a home, or supporting long-term investing. Over several years, consistent contributions in that range can grow into a meaningful financial cushion. In contrast, a vehicle generally moves in the opposite direction. As time passes, it loses value. This contrast highlights a hard truth. Money directed toward a high payment is money that cannot be working elsewhere. And to keep that payment going, people often make quiet adjustments that do not show up in a loan contract. They choose smaller living spaces than they might otherwise prefer. They delay travel, hobbies, and time with friends. Some take on extra work, not to get ahead, but simply to stay current. In certain cases, the vehicle itself becomes part of the cycle. People use their car to earn extra income, driving or delivering in their free time, to help cover the costs of owning that same car. The tool that was supposed to provide convenience becomes another responsibility that demands time and energy. None of these choices are automatically wrong. The key issue is awareness. When the focus stays only on whether the payment fits this month, the bigger trade-offs remain hidden. Once you see opportunity cost clearly, the question shifts. It is no longer just, can I make this payment? It becomes, what am I giving up? And is this trade worth it for the life I want to build? That broader perspective is rarely part of the sales conversation, but it is central to long-term financial health. When you step back and look at everything we have covered, a clear theme runs through the entire story. This is not about shaming people for liking nice vehicles. It is about intention. The goal is not to drive the cheapest possible car at all costs. The goal is to choose transportation in a way that supports the life you actually want to build. A smarter path starts with slowing down the decision. Instead of asking, "What can I get approved for?" ask what level of vehicle truly fits my needs and long-term goals. Lenders may approve a large number, but approval is not a recommendation. Choosing a vehicle that costs less than the maximum you can finance creates breathing room in your budget. Another helpful step is looking at vehicles that are a few years old. Much of the early depreciation has already happened, but the car can still be reliable and modern. Pair that with a meaningful down payment and a loan term that is as short as you can realistically handle, and you reduce both total cost and the risk of being trapped in negative equity. Just as important is shifting your focus from the monthly payment to the total cost over several years. When you include insurance, fuel, maintenance, and the likely resale value, the picture becomes more honest. That broader view makes it easier to compare options calmly, away from sales pressure. Perhaps the most powerful change is internal. Your worth as a person is not tied to the badge on your vehicle. When identity is no longer wrapped around what you drive, you gain freedom. You can make decisions based on stability, flexibility, and peace of mind. For some households, a high payment may truly fit without harming savings or future plans. For many others, it quietly strains everything else. The best vehicle is not the most impressive one on the road. It is the one that lets you sleep well, handle surprises, and move steadily toward your goals. Real success is not measured by what you drive today, but by the options you still have tomorrow.